And good afternoon, and you're tuned into the Party Line Talk Show on K103.7 FM, your community station. I'm Lori Jacobs, and today is Thursday, August 30th. Today we're going to be discussing a subject that may be considered taboo to some. It's called self-injury. We're going to speak to a woman who has been through it and who would like to share her experiences to help others. But first, we're going to take a look at the public service announcements. And welcome back. It is 12:14, and you're listening to the Party Line Talk Show. I'm your host, Lori Jacobs. According to the Canadian Mental Health Association, some teens are troubled with frequent, intense, and painful emotions. While some are able to deal with these emotions, others resort to self-injury. My guest today is a self-injury survivor, and she wants to discuss her experiences with self-injury and explain why she's doing and what she's doing to provide self-injury awareness. Melissa C. Water joins me this afternoon by phone. Welcome to the program, Melissa.
Hi.
Hi, and how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Very good. So, Melissa, tell us why you wanted to be part of this program today.
Because I think it's very important to raise awareness about self-injury. So many people are going through this and alone and don't know where to get help. And other people just don't understand it, and it's so much better if people can understand it, then it'll be easier for those who are going through it.
So, Melissa, are you a medical professional?
Not at all. I just know what I've lived through and what I've researched.
Okay, so what makes you feel that you know enough about self-injury to talk about it to others?
Because of all the experience I have with it, like years of experience and years of knowing what it and researching it and finding ways to get better and sharing that with others.
So is talking about it the first step in recovery?
Sorry?
Is talking about it the very first step to recovery?
I'd say so, because until you start talking about it, you can't get the other help you need.
So how do you tell somebody that you self-injure? You know, is there a right way and a wrong way?
Yes. Basically, like, you wouldn't want to go in and just, like, say something, like, striking, like, gory details, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
If you say gory details, then the person is going to be more, like, taken aback and more freaked out, and freaked out people are just more inclined to react badly. It's a good idea to give articles or links to information about self-injury. The more people know, the more easy it'll be. It's not a good idea to point blame, like saying that, oh, okay, I cut because of what you did or because of you. That only makes, the person more defensive and angry, and that isn't what you need. Also, let them know that you aren't telling them because you want to upset them or because you want attention, but because you love and trust them.
So what does self-injury mean to you?
What does it mean to me? It's a whole lot of trouble is what it means to me. It's something I'm very much trying to get out of, and it's a big negative.
So why do you think people self-injure?
Sorry?
Why do you think people self-injure? Why do they injure themselves?
For a number of reasons. Some of them would because they don't feel anything emotionally and they need to feel something. Or if they're feeling too much, like, say, anxiety, anger, then they would be able to feel pain or see blood and be able to be distracted from that anxiety or anger.
So is it only teens that self-injure?
No, basically it's like this stereotype that, like, teenage girls are the only ones that self-injure. But like, boys self-injure, men self-injure. Like, there is no race or sexuality or religion or, there's no boundary. There's no way to say, like, who does and who doesn't. Like, people have said that, like, I'm too pretty to cut myself, and that's, like, offensive because what does it say about me? Like, if I can't have any substance, if I can't have any past just because of what I've been through.
So when people self-injure, it's very easy to hide. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, depending on where you do it, it's easy to hide, but then when summer comes, it gets harder, and you got to find different ways. But basically, there are lots of ways you can do it. It's just that it gets difficult to do so in summer months or when you have some kind of a special occasion coming. Or gym, for a lot of kids, there's a gym class is very hard for them.
So what did you find out about statistics in Canada about self-injury?
Some people find it shocking. Other people think it's not quite high enough. Is that about 10% of people, at one subpoint or another, will have self-harmed, which includes drug abuse and eating disorders.
So is there a difference between self-injury and attempting suicide?
A big difference. Self-injury, like, there's the difference between trying to, like, slit your wrist to die and cutting your wrist just to feel pain, and, like, if you don't go deep enough to pick a vein or something. It's just to feel pain, and you survive it just fine, generally. But it is just... Sorry, I got and forgot the question.
Well, is it really... is it because you just don't know what else to do? And how can somebody get into that situation with not knowing how to respond to an emotion? Like, how does a person get to that state?
Often it's because they don't know of better ways to cope. Like, other people have learned ways, like writing or singing or talking, but some people, they just didn't, or they don't feel it sufficient, and they don't know how to vent out those emotions, so they kind of get desperate.
You have a YouTube channel where you cover the main issues of your life. There are a couple of things that you talk about. You talk about self-injury, eating disorders, and Tourette's syndrome. And we're going to talk a little bit about your channel a little bit later on. But first, I want to talk about self-injury. And what happened to you that you felt that you had to cut yourself?
Okay. Well, what happened to me? Basically, well, I was raised by an alcoholic father, and it wasn't so bad that he kind of put us in a hospital, but he was exaggerated when it came to physical violence. So I kind of wanted to get to a point where, like, even I started very young with self-injury. I was about 5 years old. I'm estimating. I started to, like, do milder forms, like nothing that left a permanent scar or anything. And I wanted to be able to conquer pain, to not hurt, and to not feel pain. So when I was hit, I wouldn't feel the pain. So it was kind of like my way of numbing that. Later on and throughout my childhood, I've also experienced sexual abuse, child sexual abuse, and then post-traumatic stress disorder, which gave me a lot of anxiety attacks, depression, a lot of feelings like that. So I started, in my adult years, I did start cutting, and then burning, and then different forms. Like, it started mild, and then ended up being as bad, just needing stitches regularly. I'd be always like, this is the answer, this is what's going to make things better.
So when did you realize that it wasn't the answer?
Oh, sadly, there are times when I still think it's the answer, because it's sort of what I just resort to, but I know that there are better ways that don't hurt my body, that don't have so many lasting effects to scars, and so I guess it took a lot of time to really realize it, even though it was kind of pounded into my head, that it was the right thing not to do it.
So, when you would cut yourself and you'd have to go to the hospital, what did they say at the hospital? Like, what would they say to you?
Generally, oh mon Dieu Seigneur. They would say, oh my Lord in heaven. It's basically what they would say when they would look at what I'd done, because it was generally extreme. They weren't, like, really maybe some reprimanding to a certain point. They would call me often, like, talk like I was an attention seeker or that I was manipulating, and they would make it very hard for me to go get help. I didn't want to go get help because of the way they were treating me. So for a while I didn't.
So did you ever end up in a mental hospital?
Well, it was a mental health floor in a hospital. So basically, yeah. So
a mental ward.
That, yeah.
Like a ward in the hospital.
Yeah, a ward.
Yeah. And how did that help you?
Well, initially it kind of had me take a step back from what I was doing. And also, seeing as I was in the hospital, I wouldn't have been able to hurt myself the way that I would if I was at home. So it was able to keep me safe for a little while until the major urge had passed.
So did you cut yourself to get attention?
Did I cut myself to get attention? No. Well, I didn't really have to. I mean, I've always been in a very loving family that's always given me a lot of attention. So I never really had a need to cut myself for attention, which I am grateful for. But I do sympathize very much with people who do cut for attention, because I think that there are reasons why they do that. Because, like, what if they need help in some way and they can't necessarily ask for it? Like, what if they're being molested and they don't know how to say it, or, there's different circumstances that you can kind of understand. Like, maybe this person, like, there's such a negative connotation when you say someone's attention seeking, but in truth, it's sort of like, it's just a human thing. It's such a necessary human thing.
So is it a cry out for help?
Yes, basically yes. In a lot of cases, it's a cry out for help. So that is what I sympathize with. There are cases where, like, people do it to be cool, because, like, being dark and depressing is supposed to be so cool, and in these days, so they kind of do that for that reason, and which gives a bad name to some cutters. They feel upset about that because they don't want to be lumped in with rest, because, like, obviously the cases you know about are the cases that are done for attention, because you don't see the people who are doing it in secret, like the countless people who are doing it in secret.
So when was the last time you cut yourself?
About 4 months ago, which is a real accomplishment for me, because there was a time I was doing it, like, every day, 3 times a day. It was pretty intense.
You also have Tourette's syndrome. Now, what is Tourette's syndrome, and why did you want to talk about that?
Well, for one reason, just in case I had some tics, and then I would, kind of explain things. But I talk about it on my channel just to, like, raise awareness about what it is, because people often think it's just about swearing. And it's not just about swearing. 10% of people with Tourette's have coprolalia, which is a swearing, but that leaves 90% who don't. So basically, it's in big. It's movements, different movements of any kind. It can, whatever the body can manufacture, can be a movement of Tourette's, or noises, whatever noises you could make. There's also echolalia, which I also have, which is you repeat words that other people say, or words that I say, sometimes even sentences.
So this is transmitted in your videos, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. And that's why you just wanted to talk about a little bit about the Tourette syndrome. Are you being treated for it?
Yes, I take meds for it. Okay. There's no med for Tourette's, like, directly. There's meds that are for other things, but can be given to Tourette syndrome patients that help to a certain extent. But there's no medication to take care of Tourette's, like, not really.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to the Party Line Talk Show on K103 Radio Ganawage. Today's topic is self-injury, and my guest is Melissa Seawater. We'll be back right after this. And welcome back, and this is the Party Line Talk Show. I'm Lori Jacobs. The topic today is self-injury. From the first-hand point of view of Melissa Seawater, Melissa is not a health professional, and she is a survivor who wants to tell her story so others don't have to go through the same things that she had to endure. So, welcome back, Melissa.
Okay, hi.
So, we were talking earlier about, self-injury. We talked a little bit about Tourette's syndrome. You also suffered from an eating disorder. What was the eating disorder?
Yes, bulimia, mostly. Sometimes periods with anorexic tendencies, but mostly it was bulimia.
So bulimia, actually, describe what you do when you have bulimia.
You end up eating a lot and then throwing it up. Whether how much that is depends on the person, really. How much they feel is a lot. But yeah, and then you throw it up and you basically, yeah. Or even if it's not eating a lot, it could just be eating your one meal and throwing that up, and yeah, that's the gist of it. So
why do you do it though? Is it some kind of control? You have control over your own body. If you don't have control of things around you, is that how it goes?
Well, it started like I had been put onto this medication. Like they were playing with my meds at the time. It was when I was first getting put into the hospitals, and they were playing with my meds and trying to find something that worked. And there was this one med they put me on that made me eat and eat and eat and eat. And then I started gaining weight, and then I freaked out. I didn't want to gain weight. So then I thought, well, I want to keep eating, but I don't want to gain weight. So I figured that I would just eat and then throw it up. So that's the introduction of that. And then it continued, like I started not just only tossing up things that were like high sugar content or high fat content. And after a while, it just became everything. Like I wouldn't keep anything, and I would just lose weight and weight and weight.
So how long did you do this?
Oh, that's been since 2008. So it's been like 4 years. And it's ongoing. Like right now, I'm in a pretty good period, so I'm happy with that. But it's still pretty strong.
So you're in like a pretty okay period in your life. But if something happens, which happens to everybody, there's always things that are negative that happen to people. Is that going to trigger it, and you're going to, fall back right into it?
I had been doing pretty well, and then I ended up deciding to meet with my father, which was a big stupid thing. It had been like 10 years I hadn't really seen him, and I just wanted him to freaking tell me what he did, admit what he did, and he didn't do that. And it was just very, very confusing for me, very hurtful. So I after that, it ended up kind of sending me into this kind of a spiral, and I ended up back in my eating disorder, and yeah, so basically whenever something really negative happens, then I kind of relapse.
So when you said you were, starting to eat with your father and you wanted him to admit, what did you want him to admit?
That he had molested me. And my sister.
And how old were you when that happened?
Well, it started like I was very young. I was like 5, and then it wasn't until I was a teenager again, and yeah.
Because I read one of your poems, and it was very deeply rooted in sexual abuse.
Yes.
So, with your eating disorder, did your health suffer at all? Did you, were you diagnosed maybe with malnutrition or?
Well, I became anemic, so I had to take iron pills. I also ended up having sort of like, if you end up throwing up enough times, then the stuff ended up coming up even when you don't want it to. So I would end up being like sleeping, and I would have my food come up, which is absolutely disgusting, but I would choke on it and I couldn't breathe. So that was a big thing for my health. Like I was worried about that, not being able to breathe. What else? I think those are the biggest things. I haven't experienced any like eternal, like long-lasting effects, really, at least none that I know of.
So do you see someone like a therapist or a doctor on a long-term basis?
I have a family doctor. I had met him in 2008, and he was in a walk-in clinic, and he offered to be my doctor after I told him about the cutting. So after that, he ended up following me, and he's a really great man, a great doctor. Also, he ended up getting me connected to other help, like psychiatrists that's followed me for a few years. I went into a kind of a program for borderline personality disorder. It was a group program, and then we had individual therapy and stuff like that. Right now, I'm kind of on hold because I'm transferring cities. So I don't have therapy at the moment, but I will in the fall.
So is it very important to have somebody to talk to, though?
Oh, it helps a lot. It helps a lot to get everything out, and sometimes you don't realize things don't make sense until you say it. So I can have done or thought of doing some pretty stupid things, and I didn't really realize it was stupid until I was in therapy saying it.
So let's talk a little bit about your YouTube channel. First of all, how can listeners access your channel?
Basically, you go to YouTube, and in the YouTube search engine, you type in Idranktheseawater, no spaces. No spaces, Idranktheseawater. And basically my channel will come up, and all my videos will come up.
I watched one about the Self-Injury Awareness Day, and you were interviewing people. There was a lot of young people, but not many parents would talk to you.
No, that was disappointing. I wanted kind of the full spectrum, the full generations, and really I didn't get that. I got a lot of younger ones were very willing. I had one very nice lady who did, but most people in the older generation, they just didn't want to. Like they weren't interested at all. They were even kind of moody about it. Like they didn't want anything. They didn't even want to have the subject introduced. It was pretty sad.
Do you think that self-injury and bulimia and things like that, do you think that existed in the older generation, or was it more hidden and now it's more out in the open?
Oh, I think it did exist. It just like that, like you say, right now there's a lot of awareness for it, and it was very hidden back then. I know a lot of stories of people who had eating disorders or like was cutting back then, but that don't necessarily know about it until now.
So what was your experience making the video? Because I know you've made a lot of videos, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But making this particular video, what was it about it that just made you keep on and not giving up?
Well, I wanted to get the opinion of a lot of people, because I was asking them basically what their opinions on, what they knew about self-injury and what their opinions on it were. So I wanted to get a lot of opinions, and I knew that people who were going through it, they want to know this stuff, and they're always curious, what do people think? So I thought, you know what, I'll go and get that, and they'll be able to know. So I thought it was important, and especially since it was Self-Injury Awareness Day, I felt I wanted to do something big and meaningful. So that's what I did.
So when is Self-Injury Awareness Day?
That's March 1st of every year.
And the day that you were doing it, there was a big snowstorm, I think, eh?
Yeah, there was a big snowstorm. I was supposed to do it outside in the streets of St. Catherine Street. I went to Montreal. But with the storm, we went into the mall, and I filmed in the mall. So might have been a bit noisy, but it went through.
So when you video your videos, is it kind of a therapy for you?
Yes, it is. It is. Because when I'm going through something, I express that to them and say what I'm going through and how I'm going through it, and I'm very, very honest, and I let them know basically what all is going on with me, which I think that is what draws some of them to me, because they want to have someone to relate to, and I'm telling them what's going on. So yeah.
You look very young in your videos. About how old would you be?
Ancient. I have no age.
You have no age.
Yeah, I'm very sensitive about my age. You wouldn't even believe it. I'm so weird. Ever since I was like 17, I was like, oh no. So no, I don't give my age.
You look like you're in your early 20s anyway.
I'm in my 20s, yes.
Okay. So do you get much traffic on your channel?
I do. I've got 7,200 something subscribers and like 1.4 million video views. I started off with just like nothing, pretty much like everybody else, but in time the audience grew and to what I have now.
So what kind of feedback have you been receiving?
About the videos? Well, people, thankfully, like most of the feedback is good. Like there is negative feedback. There are people like we call haters that are like just your attention seeking, or they just point out any kind of negative, or just you're fat or you're ugly, or just for anything to say something bad, because they feel they can do that behind their computer screens. But basically the bigger part of it is what I really want to portray, is because they're so great. And they support me a lot, and also, like, they give me information about how my videos have affected them, like, say, if they've been cutting less because of my videos, or they stopped cutting, or maybe even it saved their lives, like that they wouldn't be here without the videos. So I find that makes a very big impact on me. It makes me kind of want to keep going.
Well, maybe that's what your purpose in life is, to help others.
Often I feel that, because like with the Tourette syndrome, I have it severely enough that I can't really work very much, so I find that it does give me a purpose. Like, I don't know what I would do without it. Like, and even if I were working in another kind of a field, I don't think I would be able to affect as many people as I do on YouTube. So I think that this is kind of the perfect way of helping people.
So you actually started this project writing poetry. How did the poetry morph into video making and YouTube?
Well, at first it was like I was writing all this poetry, and at the time my family didn't know, my friends didn't know, so I had no one to share it with. And I thought that it was pretty decent poetry. It was good poetry, so I wanted to share it. And so I started putting it on YouTube in like scrolling words to music. And so that's how it started with that. And after a while, I kind of got inspired by another YouTuber who was just talking about what she was going through. And after that, I sort of thought, well, I've been through it too. I've learned a lot of things. I had been through a lot of therapy. I had been to the hospital a lot, where you kind of learn different ways of dealing. And I felt like I had something to give, to teach. And so I made some videos in the beginning about how to deal with self-injury, how to cut less, how to get out of it unscathed.
How many videos have you produced so far?
Technically about 215 or so, but I've deleted a lot, so there's maybe 98, I think. I'm pretty sure.
So your channel is not simply about video logging or blogging or whatever the term. What is the proper term?
Vlogging?
Vlogging.
Yeah. But most of it is vlogging. But I'm trying to get into like a wider variety of videos. Like I've interviewed some people, a psychiatrist, about Tourette syndrome, eating disorders, and self-injury. I've interviewed a psychologist about eating disorders. She's an eating disorder specialist. I've interviewed people who have been through it and who are raising awareness themselves, like that might have their own YouTube channels, and who are also working like this. So I've done those interviews. I also do what I call mini movies, which I'm very much getting into right now. I've made several movies where basically I play different characters, like I play all the characters in the movie, and I wear different wigs and different outfits so that I can believably play them all. And then I sort of edit it together to make it look like a continuing story. So that's my mini movies, and I'm actually starting new things with my mini movies, which is that I can, you call it cloning, video cloning, where I can be two people in the same screen, two Melissas in the same screen. So I can be one me with a wig and one me without a wig or with a different wig, and so it kind of makes it more believable and more interesting to watch and more interesting to learn from.
So Melissa, how are you funded?
Oh, the funding. Some of it has been by wonderful people on YouTube who have donated, and some of it is me. I fund it myself. I tried to get a grant from the National Film Board of Canada, but I was very much turned down. So I don't think they cover YouTube videos. It's more videos that you could take to like a film fair or something like that.
And you also have a book. It's called Lady Injury.
I have a book, Lady Injury.
So explain why you decided to write it and how can listeners get a copy? What is it about?
What is it about? It's about a 6-month period of my life where I was going in and out of hospitals for my self-injury and eating disorders. It starts when I first told the doctor at the walk-in clinic about my cutting, so I talked about that. He offered to be my doctor, and the next time I saw him, he suggested that I go to the hospital so I could be supported when I would get into crisis again. Because I'd started burning too at that point, so he was like, okay, now this is getting worse, so I was supposed to go to the hospital. I was really scared to go, but he did convince me. He was very reassuring, so I did go. It's basically a detailed account of my time at the hospital, going in and out of the hospital. Like I once spent 4 weeks there, and another time I spent 6 weeks there for my eating disorders. A lot of really intense things happened to me there, and I did a lot of really intense things to myself. I would hurt myself, and there are a lot of scenes where you read about me getting tied down, which is horrifying, but necessary, I imagine. Like some hospitals believe in medical restraints, like they just give you meds to restrain you, while other hospitals use literal restraints. So I think this book helps people understand like what self-injury and eating disorders are really about. It can help those who are going through it feel like they're understood.
How can people get a copy of it?
You can find it on Amazon.com. You can find it on Barnes & Noble. Or you can go to any regular bookstore and order it in through them. Basically, Lady Injury by Melissa Seawater. And it'll be the first book that comes up on the list.
We're going to take one last break and return to hear more from my guest, Melissa Seawater. We're talking about self-injury, and we'll be back right after this. And we are back. This is the Party Line Talk Show, and today we're talking about a first-hand account of self-injury with Melissa.C.Water. Melissa is not a health professional. She is a survivor who wants to tell her story so others don't have to go through the same things she had to endure. Melissa joins me on the phone. So, Melissa, what is in your future? What do you plan to do in the short term and the long term?
Well, right now I'm really investing myself into my mini-movies. I think it's a great way for people to learn. So I have some movies about suicide awareness, the isolation of eating disorders. I'm planning a 1-hour movie about Tourette syndrome, which may take a while. I have a video about how to tell your family about your self-injury, which is really great because I really want to encourage kids to tell their parents or whoever they need to. So I've done research on like we talked about before, the right and wrong ways to tell someone you self-injure. That's what I'm planning for my videos. I've been saying this for a long time, so maybe some people aren't going to believe me anymore. But what I'd really love is if there could be some education about self-injury and what it's really about to those in the medical field, like doctors, nurses, orderlies, that kind of thing, so they could understand. If they can understand, it will help cutters feel more at ease with stepping forward and asking for help to go to the hospital. If there's no fear of being treated badly, it would be a huge step in the right direction. So that's one thing I've dreamed of doing. It's going to schools or other places where I could talk to those in the medical field about cutting really is. I'd love to, or even kids in school, talking to kids in school about it and telling them how they can get help or what to do with the freshest cutting and how to recognize the signs, you know.
Mm-hmm. So
important.
What should a person do if they or their family member or friend self-injures? What's the first thing that they should do?
Well, I do believe it. Well, I guess I encourage telling if the person doesn't want to tell on themselves. Like, they might be mad at you for it, but if they don't want to tell on themselves, then basically I do believe that it's a good idea to tell somebody in a position of authority, in a position of helping, that this is going on.
Melissa, what is your final message to the listening audience?
Basically, I don't know exactly. Be open-minded and listen to what is really going on, because sometimes people that you love might be going through this and you have no idea because it's such a hidden thing. You have no way of knowing in many cases. So be open-minded because someone you love might be going through this too.
So thank you very much, Melissa. Do you have any contact information? How can people contact you? What again is
on YouTube? I have it's Idranktheseawater, no spaces. Idranktheseawater. I have a website, but with helpful links of how to get help. But basically, you can find that link and everything else on my channel.
So I drank this. I was going to say the seaway. I drank the seawater. The reason why I was asking you about the title is because right where the radio station is right now, we have the St. Lawrence Seaway that flows like 20 feet from our radio station. And I thought it was kind of funny that you called it, the seawater. I drank the seawater, Anyway, so thank you so much, Melissa, for joining me this afternoon.
You're quite welcome.
And good luck with your channel and your book, and I hope many good things happen for you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. So long.
Bye.